The Korean War, a conflict often overshadowed in history, casts a long shadow over American foreign policy. It was a war born from the ashes of World War II, carving up the Korean peninsula along the 38th parallel. In the north, a communist regime, backed by the Soviet Union, consolidated power. In the south, a fledgling democracy, supported by the United States, struggled to find its footing. The stage was set for a clash of ideologies, a proxy war in the burgeoning Cold War. The division of Korea was never meant to be permanent. Yet, as the Cold War intensified, the fate of this small peninsula became increasingly entangled in the global struggle between communism and democracy. The United States, scarred by the rise of communist China, viewed the Korean situation with growing alarm. The Soviet Union, eager to expand its sphere of influence, saw an opportunity to challenge American dominance. The Korean Peninsula, once a land of ancient history and vibrant culture, became a focal point for global tensions. The Cold War, a global chess match between the United States and the Soviet Union, found a bloody battleground in the Korean Peninsula. The North Korean invasion of South Korea on June 25, 1950, shattered the fragile peace and plunged the world into a new conflict. The invasion, a surprise attack across the 38th parallel, caught the South Korean and American forces off guard. The North Korean army, equipped with Soviet tanks and weaponry, made rapid advances, pushing deep into South Korean territory. The United States, under President Harry S. Truman, faced a defining moment. The fall of South Korea to communism, Truman believed, would embolden communist forces worldwide and threaten the balance of power in the nascent Cold War. The United States, invoking the principle of collective security enshrined in the United Nations Charter, rallied international support for intervention. The Korean War, though fought on a distant peninsula, would have far-reaching consequences for American foreign policy and the global order. Truman remained resolute, arguing that the Korean War was a test of American resolve, a line in the sand that could not be crossed. The United States, along with a coalition of UN forces, committed troops to the Korean Peninsula, marking the beginning of America's longest-running police action. The Korean War marked a turning point in American foreign policy. It signaled a shift from a Eurocentric worldview to a global strategy of containing communism. The Truman Doctrine, articulated in 1947, had pledged American support to countries resisting communist pressure. Korea represented the first time the United States committed troops to combat communism in Asia. This intervention signaled America's willingness to bear the burden of global leadership and to confront communism wherever it threatened to expand. The fear of the domino theory, the belief that the fall of one country to communism would inevitably lead to the fall of others, drove the decision. The recent communist victory in China loomed large in the minds of American policymakers. The Soviet Union's support for North Korea was seen as evidence of its desire to challenge American power and undermine the post-war order. The Korean War led to a significant increase in American military spending and the expansion of the American military presence around the world. The conflict laid the foundation for the national security state that would come to characterize American foreign policy in the Cold War era. Section 4. The Price of Freedom, Military Buildup, and the National Security State. The Korean War had a profound impact on the American military and the nation's approach to national security. The conflict exposed the limitations of America's post-World War II military, which had been drastically reduced in size and scope. In response to the North Korean invasion, President Truman initiated a rapid military buildup, dramatically increasing defense spending and expanding the armed forces. This marked the beginning of a long period of heightened military preparedness that would continue throughout the Cold War. The concept of containment, first articulated by diplomat George Kennan, became the cornerstone of American foreign policy. Containment aimed to prevent the further spread of communism by drawing a line in the sand and resisting Soviet expansionism wherever it occurred. The war's impact on American society was equally significant, fueling a wave of anti-communist sentiment and paranoia, often manifested in McCarthyism. The Korean War, though often referred to as the Forgotten War, left an indelible mark on American society and its institutions. Section 5. A Legacy of Interventionism, from Korea to Vietnam and Beyond. The Korean War established a precedent for American interventionism in the decades that followed. The conflict cemented the United States' role as the policeman of the world, willing to intervene militarily in foreign conflicts to contain communism and protect its perceived interests. This interventionist impulse would lead the United States into a series of protracted and costly conflicts, most notably, the Vietnam War. The lessons of Korea, both real and perceived, weighed heavily on American policymakers during the Vietnam War. The specter of the domino theory and the fear of communist expansionism haunted American decision-making, leading to a gradual escalation of American involvement in Vietnam. The Korean War's legacy of interventionism continues to shape American foreign policy today. The debate over the limits of American power and the wisdom of interventionism remains a central theme in American foreign policy discourse. Section 6. The Nuclear Shadow, Korea, and the Atomic Age. The Korean War unfolded under the ominous shadow of the atomic bomb. The conflict took place just 5 years after the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, ushering in the nuclear age. The use of atomic weapons in Korea was seriously considered by the Truman administration, and the conflict accelerated the nuclear arms race between the United States and the Soviet Union. The Korean War highlighted the potential for nuclear weapons to escalate regional conflicts into global catastrophes. The United States' nuclear arsenal, while intended as a deterrent, raised the stakes of the conflict and fueled fears of a wider war. The Korean War marked the beginning of the era of nuclear deterrence, a precarious balance of terror that would define the Cold War. The conflict cemented the centrality of nuclear weapons in American national security strategy. Section 7. Echoes of the Forgotten War. The Korean War's enduring impact on U.S. foreign policy. The Korean War, despite its often overlooked place in American history, continues to cast a long shadow on U.S. foreign policy. The conflict's legacy can be seen in America's enduring commitment to South Korea's security, its robust military presence in the Asia-Pacific region, and its ongoing efforts to contain North Korea's nuclear ambitions. The Korean War also serves as a reminder of the human cost of conflict. The war resulted in the deaths of millions of Koreans, both soldiers and civilians. The United States suffered over 36,000 combat deaths and over 100,000 wounded. The Korean War, though often referred to as the Forgotten War, continues to shape the geopolitical landscape of Northeast